My son arrived with his fiancée. She cornered me in the kitchen, pushing me against the counter. "Listen, old man, once we're married, we'll stick you in the cheapest nursing home. He's tired of looking after someone like you." My son stood in the doorway, nodding. "It's true, Dad. We need your house more than you." I just smiled and kept cooking. This morning, my phone had 23 missed calls and a flood of urgent texts. It had been a long week preparing for Liam and Carla to visit. The house was freshly cleaned, and the guest room was set up with new sheets and fresh towels, all to make them feel welcome. The narrator had always been the one to give, to bend over backward for his son Liam, even when it meant sacrificing his own needs. So when they arrived, he did what he always did. He made them feel comfortable. After all, it was only natural for a father to want to be supportive, right? But when Carla walked into the kitchen that Saturday afternoon, her smile barely masked her disdain. The shift in her energy was palpable. The narrator thought maybe she had come to help. He was wrong. As he was stirring the sauce, Carla walked up to him, too close for comfort, and shoved him hard against the counter. The sudden physicality startled him, and before he could react, she leaned in, her breath hot and acrid with coffee. "Listen, old man," she spat. "Once we're married, you'll be dumped in the cheapest nursing home we can find. Liam is sick of taking care of a useless burden like you." The narrator froze, his mind reeling. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. He had expected some tension, perhaps, but not this level of hostility. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, to argue that he was still capable of taking care of himself, but the words wouldn't come. His chest tightened and his heart began to race. Then, to his horror, he saw Liam standing in the doorway, a casual look on his face, as if this conversation was just another ordinary moment. Liam's eyes met his, and for a split second the narrator hoped for some sign of loyalty, some defense from his son. But Liam didn't offer an apology or any sign of remorse. Instead, he simply nodded and said, "It's true, Dad. We need your house more than you do." It was as if the ground had been ripped out from under him. His son, the boy he had raised, the one he had given everything for, was now standing there, siding with Carla, talking about his home as if it was some commodity to be claimed. It was more than just disrespect. It was a betrayal so deep, so cold, that it felt as though it cut straight through him. The narrator didn't react. He couldn't. He just smiled, trying to push down the lump in his throat. He turned back to the stove, pretending everything was fine, while inside he felt the weight of the years of sacrifices he had made for Liam. The late nights, working 2 jobs, the financial support, the emotional investment, all of it had led to this moment where his own flesh and blood stood before him with Carla plotting to toss him aside. He nodded, his mind going blank as he added oregano to the sauce, a futile attempt to distract himself from the crushing pain. Carla and Liam moved to the living room, their voices fading as they resumed their plans, oblivious to the emotional storm they had set in motion. The narrator stood alone in the kitchen, his hands shaking slightly as he continued cooking, each stir of the sauce feeling like an eternity. But as the hours passed, one thought began to form in his mind. Things were never going to be the same again, and for the first time in his life he wasn't sure if he even cared. As the narrator stirs the sauce, his mind drifts back through the years, reflecting on the life he has lived. He's 58 now, and the weight of those years presses on him. It feels like a lifetime ago when his wife Eloise passed away from cancer. He was only 43 then, and their son Liam was just 15, thrust into a world that neither of them had prepared for. It wasn't just a loss of a partner, it was the loss of a shared dream, a life that was supposed to be built together. But Eloise was gone, leaving him with nothing but memories, and their son to raise alone. Raising Liam had been his life's focus, his sole priority. He poured everything into him, his time, his energy, his finances. Liam had always been the center of his world, and the narrator never hesitated to give. It was the role of a father, after all, to put their child first, to sacrifice their own needs and desires to ensure their child was happy, healthy, and cared for. And that's exactly what he did. He gave and gave, often neglecting his own health, his own happiness. Liam was never shy about asking for what he needed, and the narrator never once said no. Whether it was a last-minute loan, a co-signed credit card, or the emotional support Liam needed, he was always there, ready to step in. But as the years wore on, the narrator began to realize something troubling. Despite all the sacrifices, despite everything he had done for Liam, the return had been minimal. Liam didn't appreciate it. Liam didn't need him the way he used to. Instead, the narrator had become something else in his son's eyes, a tool, a resource, a means to an end. It wasn't even about gratitude anymore. It was about convenience. Liam had become an adult, with his own life, his own ambitions. But he had no interest in being emotionally supportive or in any way giving back. The narrator had long ago come to terms with this, at least that's what he told himself. He convinced himself that this was just the way parenting worked. It was his job to give without expecting anything in return. That's what parents did, right? They were there for their children even when their children grew indifferent. He thought it was just the cost of love. So he swallowed his feelings of disappointment and resentment. He avoided conflict, chose to be the quiet, reliable one in the background. He never complained, even when the neighbor's dog would leave messes on his lawn, or when he felt completely drained from working 2 jobs to make ends meet. In the years since Eloise's death, he had put everything aside, his own dating life, his social life, even his personal dreams. All that mattered was Liam. The narrator had been the ultimate pushover, the kind of person who would take on extra burdens for others, expecting little but silently wishing for recognition. He gave up his own happiness in hopes that Liam would one day see it, but instead, all he was left with was the realization that he was becoming invisible. His existence seemed to revolve entirely around Liam's needs, and still, Liam couldn't see him, really see him, for who he was, a person, a man with his own desires and limits. As the narrator reflects on these years, the pain of it all settles deep in his chest. There was a time when he believed that Liam would grow up and appreciate him, would become someone who understood the sacrifices made. But now, as he finds himself in the kitchen with Liam's fiancée humiliating him, he knows that he's been living in a world of self-imposed denial. He's no longer just the father, he's become a bystander in his own life, caught in the role of the caretaker, the martyr. And it's in that kitchen, amidst the familiar smell of sauce and simmering regret, that he feels a spark of something new, something that's been buried for too long. A sense of clarity is starting to form, and it's clear now. This isn't just about the betrayal anymore. This is about reclaiming his life. The narrator stands in the kitchen, his hands still gripping the wooden spoon, though his thoughts are far from the simmering sauce. The words Carla had just spat at him replay in his mind, each one sinking deeper and deeper, making it harder for him to breathe. He'd always known his son was self-centered, that his sacrifices had often gone unnoticed. But hearing it laid out so coldly, so ruthlessly by Carla, and worse, seeing Liam stand there in agreement, had shaken him to his core. For a moment, everything feels unreal. He stands motionless by the stove, the steady sound of the simmering sauce now muffled by the storm brewing inside him. His mind flicks back to all the times he'd been taken advantage of by Liam, the countless loans he'd co-signed, the bills he'd paid for, the times Liam had needed help and he had been there, even when it wasn't convenient. And now this blatant betrayal, not just from Carla, but from his own flesh and blood. The realization stabs through him like a cold blade. All those years of devotion, all those sacrifices, had been treated as if they meant nothing. He had been nothing more than a stepping stone for their ambitions. He quickly shakes off the urge to react. He can't let them see how deeply they've hurt him, not yet. Instead, he goes about serving dinner, his movements mechanical as he tries to hide the anger and betrayal welling up inside. He can feel the heat of the kitchen around him, the weight of the moment pressing on his chest, but he forces a smile. It feels foreign on his face, like a mask he's been wearing for too long. When he sets the plates down in front of Liam and Carla, he notices Carla's obvious disdain for the meal he's prepared. She barely looks at the food, but he knows better than to comment. He can feel the tension thick in the air as they begin eating, their silence more oppressive than any argument. Liam says little, clearly avoiding eye contact, his usual confidence now gone, replaced by an uncomfortable tension. The narrator watches them both, his heart sinking further with each passing moment. He wonders if Liam realizes what Carla has just done, what he has just done, or if he's simply too blinded by his own desires to see the full extent of the damage. But the shock is beginning to wear off, and a cold, hard anger starts to take its place. He's angry at Carla, but more so at himself. How did he let it get this far? How did he let his son grow into this entitled, selfish person? He had always avoided confrontation, always been the peacemaker, the one who put everyone else's needs ahead of his own. But for the first time, the anger doesn't feel like a burden, it feels like a fuel, a spark that's slowly starting to burn through the layers of passivity he's wrapped himself in for decades. He realizes something he's known deep down but never acknowledged fully before. Liam doesn't care about him. And Carla is a manipulative opportunist who has no interest in family or love. She only wants to use him to get what she can, and she's using his son to do it. As the meal continues, the narrator finds himself lost in thought, his mind racing through years of accumulated frustrations. Times he'd let Liam off the hook, times he'd been the silent supporter in the background, hoping for some recognition that never came. He realizes that he can't go on like this anymore. He can't keep pretending everything's fine, putting up with their disrespect, their selfishness, their disregard for him. This isn't just about being hurt by Carla's words. It's about realizing that for all these years, he's been nothing more than a doormat. He excuses himself from the table under the pretense of needing to check on something in the kitchen. In truth, he just needs a moment to breathe. Standing in the quiet of the kitchen, he leans against the counter and takes a deep breath. His heart is still pounding, but this time it's not from the shock. It's from something else. Something different. The spark of action. His mind begins to turn, slowly at first, then gaining speed. He starts planning. He's going to take control back. The idea of revenge, of payback, had never crossed his mind before. He had always trusted that karma would deal with people like Carla and Liam, but now he knows better. No more. He can't just sit idly by and let them destroy him, take everything he's worked for, and walk away without consequences. The thought settles into him like a quiet certainty. He'll make calls. He'll speak to a lawyer. He'll protect his house, his assets. He won't let them take what's his. For the first time in years, the narrator feels the stirrings of something powerful, a sense of agency he thought he'd lost forever. He doesn't know exactly what comes next, but one thing is clear. Liam and Carla will not win. They'll learn a lesson, one that will echo in the choices they make from here on out. As he re-enters the dining room, he forces a smile, but now, deep inside, there's a calm determination he's never had before. Things are about to change. The door clicks shut behind Liam and Carla as they leave for the bar, their laughter echoing faintly in the hallway. The narrator remains in the silence of the kitchen, staring at the unfinished meal that he's left behind. His hands, still trembling slightly from the confrontation, grip the edge of the counter as a storm of thoughts rushes through his mind. He can feel the anger building inside him, a rising tide of emotion that he can no longer ignore. For the first time, he feels something inside him snap, as if all the years of being taken advantage of have finally broken through the surface. He sits down at the kitchen table, his mind whirling. He's no longer the meek, accommodating father he used to be, the one who always played the role of the pushover, the one who would keep quiet and avoid confrontation. That man is gone. The years of suppressed frustration, disappointment, and hurt have finally reached their breaking point, and in their place is someone determined to take back control. The first thought that crosses his mind is simple. I'm not going to let them win, not like this. It's like a switch has flipped in him. His emotions are still raw, but now there's clarity. He has a plan. He's no longer just reacting to their cruelty, he's going to act. His fingers move automatically as he reaches for his iPad. It's the one Liam constantly mocks for being ancient, but it works just fine. He starts with a call to his brother Henry. They've always had a complicated relationship, but Henry had been telling him for years that Liam was using him. The narrator hadn't wanted to believe it, but now, with Liam's words ringing in his ears, he knows Henry was right all along. Henry picks up quickly. The narrator explains the situation briefly, his voice steady but with an edge of something new. He's not asking for sympathy. He's asking for help. Henry listens, then offers a few words of support and a suggestion. Call a lawyer. And so the narrator does. The call to the lawyer's office is less emotional than he expected, but it's far more productive. He's not looking for advice on what he should do emotionally. He's looking for a plan, a strategy. The lawyer listens patiently as the narrator explains the situation, the emotional weight of it all buried behind the cold, clear steps he's now taking. He asks about his assets, his house, his finances. The lawyer confirms that there's a lot that can be done to protect his property, especially with the land's increasing value due to nearby development. The idea that Liam and Carla might take everything from him, his house, his memories, his security, seems like a distant, laughable thought now. He'll protect himself. He'll outsmart them. Next, he picks up the phone again, this time dialing the number of a real estate agent he knows from the neighborhood. The agent has been leaving notes on his door for months, offering to buy his house, telling him how much it's worth now. The narrator had always dismissed them, assuming they were just trying to take advantage of him. But now he sees the potential. He asks for a meeting, wanting to understand how much his house is really worth and if it's possible to put the property into a trust or some kind of protection. The agent promises to come over the next day to discuss his options. Then, for the final step, he contacts a private investigator. He has no idea what exactly he's going to uncover, but he knows that he needs to be prepared. The PI will dig deeper into Carla's past, especially her previous marriages. He suspects that Carla is more than just a gold digger. There's something about her that feels calculated, too strategic. The narrator's gut tells him that there's more to this story than what he's seen, and he's determined to find out what. With each call, he feels a little more in control, a little more empowered. He's not just sitting back and letting life happen to him anymore. He's taking action. The same quiet, accommodating man who used to avoid confrontation is now shifting into someone new, a man who will fight for himself, who will no longer allow himself to be trampled over. As the evening wears on, he feels a sense of calm settle over him, something he hasn't felt in a long time. The fury is still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it's no longer just a reaction. It's fuel. Every call he makes, every move he takes is a small victory. Liam and Carla don't realize it yet, but their world is about to be turned upside down. And the narrator? For the first time in decades, he's no longer the victim. He's the one holding the cards, and he's ready to play them. The next few days feel like a whirlwind. The narrator is no longer the passive observer in his own life. He's the architect of his future. Each phone call, each discovery feels like another piece falling into place as he works to dismantle everything Liam and Carla have been planning. The first call that brings a sense of unease is to his lawyer. The lawyer confirms that Liam had indeed been to see him months ago, asking about options for elder care and property transfer. The realization hits hard. Liam had been preparing to take his house long before this confrontation in the kitchen. The narrator never got the message from the lawyer about Liam's inquiry because Liam had set up the voicemail system and had conveniently erased it. The lawyer reveals that it was a strategic move to get information from the father without his knowledge, something underhanded, and yet all too calculated. A cold wave of anger sweeps through the narrator, but it's quickly followed by a surge of clarity. He's been used, and now he has the upper hand. He's no longer caught off guard. The years of being taken advantage of suddenly seem like a distant memory, replaced with something sharper, a sense of purpose. As he continues to dig deeper, the discoveries start to pile up. The private investigator he hired delivers results faster than expected. Carla's past is far darker than he could have imagined. The PI uncovers that Carla had been married twice before, both times to men over 50. Both marriages ended with her walking away with property, and both men were left financially devastated. It's a pattern, a manipulative strategy that Carla has repeated with each of her husbands. Her track record is a clear indication of what she's after: wealth, security, and control. But it doesn't stop there. The investigator digs further into Liam's finances. There, buried in his bank statements, are small, unexplained transfers. $200, $300 here and there, all adding up to over $7,000. The narrator hadn't noticed it at first. But looking closer, he sees that the payments were made directly from his account to Liam's, unauthorized, unaccounted for. It's not just small amounts, it's a betrayal of trust. Liam had been using his father's money for his own luxury, siphoning funds under the guise of needing help while living a carefree life. The worst part? The money he thought was going toward Liam's education or bills had instead gone into vacations and other places, all funded by his father's sacrifice. It's a bitter pill to swallow. All those years of working overtime, of taking on extra debt to help his son, had been met with nothing but deceit. Liam had taken the help, but never with the intention of paying it back or even acknowledging it. It was a one-sided relationship, and the narrator had been too blind to see it until now. But the final blow comes when he turns his attention to his own home. The real estate agent arrives as scheduled and informs him that the property, once thought to be of modest value, is now worth a small fortune. The new shopping center and the ongoing development nearby have inflated the land's worth significantly. The narrator is shocked. What he thought was just his little home has turned into a valuable asset, one that Liam and Carla had clearly been salivating over. He wonders how long they've been planning this. But instead of considering selling, the narrator decides to protect his asset in a way he hadn't considered before. He transfers the ownership of the house into an irrevocable trust controlled by his brother Henry. On paper, the house no longer belongs to him, but he still has lifetime rights to live there. If anything were to happen to him, the house would not go to Liam. It would go to Henry's children, who, unlike Liam, have shown him respect over the years. Liam and Carla have no idea what's coming. They think they've already won, but the narrator has outsmarted them, and they won't be able to take what's his. With the house protected, the next step is to sever all financial ties with Liam. He visits his bank and makes the necessary changes. New account numbers, new passwords, two-factor authentication on everything. He removes Liam as his emergency contact and beneficiary, replacing him with Henry. The narrator cancels all automatic payments. Liam's student loans, his car insurance, even his cell phone plan, which, to his surprise, Liam was still on. For the first time, the narrator doesn't feel guilty. This isn't punishment, it's protection. It's taking back what he'd foolishly given away for years. Each move is deliberate, calculated. There's no more hesitation. The guilt he might have felt a week ago is gone, replaced with a new resolve. He realizes that all these years he's been holding on to Liam's mistakes, forgiving them over and over, pretending that his son's actions were somehow his own fault for not being more firm, more demanding. But now, he understands that this was never about him being a bad father. It was about Liam choosing to exploit him, and about Carla being the catalyst for this betrayal. The decisions are final. The narrator is no longer the passive, forgiving father. He is a man who has taken back control, who has drawn clear boundaries and is ready to enforce them. His revenge isn't about petty retaliation. It's about securing his future and ensuring that those who tried to take everything from him are left with nothing. By the time he finishes his calls and completes the paperwork, he feels a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. Liam and Carla may think they have won, but the narrator knows better. His actions have set in motion a chain of events that will change everything, and for the first time, he doesn't feel like a victim. He feels like the one who is finally in control. The days leading up to the dinner are filled with a quiet anticipation that both excites and unsettles the narrator. He moves through the motions of his daily life, but every action, every decision is guided by a singular purpose: the upcoming dinner. This isn't just any dinner. It's the moment he's been preparing for, the moment he will finally confront Liam and Carla with everything he's uncovered. The narrator begins the day by making sure everything is in place. He spends hours preparing the house, not just cleaning, but carefully setting the stage for what is about to unfold. It's a meticulous process. He sweeps every room, arranges the furniture just so, and even polishes the silverware, things he would never usually pay attention to. He wants everything to be perfect. This dinner isn't just a family gathering. It's the stage for the reckoning he's been waiting for. The narrator chooses his menu with care. It's a dish that he knows will evoke memories, a comforting reminder of the life Liam once had with him, a life that has been taken for granted, a life that is about to be ripped from him. His famous pot roast, a meal he's made countless times over the years, will be the centerpiece. It's symbolic, a reminder of the family dinners they used to have when Liam was younger and before all the betrayals began. He's also bought a nice bottle of whiskey, something special, not just for them but for himself. He's never needed alcohol to keep his composure, but tonight he might. The atmosphere in the house feels charged, as though the walls themselves are holding their breath, waiting for the storm to come. The narrator feels the weight of what he's about to do, but it doesn't paralyze him. It sharpens him. He can't back down now. This is the culmination of everything he's been through, the final act in a play he never wanted to be a part of, but one he's been forced to star in. He knows that confronting Liam and Carla will change everything, but he no longer cares about the fallout. He's done being the silent, passive father. As he finishes setting the table, he checks the guest list one last time. Henry, his brother, will be there, of course. Henry has been his rock through this whole ordeal, offering moral support, listening to his frustrations, and giving practical advice. The narrator has made sure to tell him everything, what's been happening, the betrayal, the discoveries. Henry has been key to helping him see the bigger picture, and now his presence is essential. Henry's wife will also be there, as will the narrator's niece Riley and her husband. They've all been invited for a simple family dinner, though none of them know what's really going on. The final surprise guest will be Carla's parents. The narrator hadn't told Liam or Carla that he had contacted them. They think Carla's parents are dead, but in truth, they've been very much alive and living just a few hours away. The parents don't know about the engagement, let alone the plans to take over the narrator's home, and they're more than eager to hear about their daughter's new life. The evening approaches, and the narrator is calm, almost eerily so. He checks himself in the mirror, adjusting his shirt as if preparing for a normal evening, but inside he feels a sense of power growing. He spent years allowing Liam to walk all over him, believing that being the bigger person would bring peace. But peace never came. What Liam and Carla don't know is that the narrator has spent the last few days setting his plan into motion, lining up the evidence and the people who will help him expose their lies. He double-checks the small camera he's installed on the bookshelf in the dining room. It's discreet, hidden in a way that no one will notice. He doesn't need to make a scene or shout his accusations. He has everything he needs on tape. The camera will capture every word, every shift in expression, every uncomfortable moment. Liam and Carla think they have the upper hand, but they are about to be caught in their own web of lies. The narrator's thoughts return to the details of Carla's past, the secrets he's uncovered. He can almost picture the look on Liam's face when he learns the truth about Carla's marriages, how she's used men for their wealth, leaving them destroyed and emotionally empty. And then there's Liam's own financial manipulations, his unauthorized withdrawals from his father's bank account, the way he's been living off the narrator's generosity without ever acknowledging it. The betrayal is deep, but the revenge doesn't feel like a victory. It feels more like justice, like finally reclaiming something that should have been his all along. When the doorbell rings, the narrator takes a deep breath. It's time. He opens the door with a calm smile, his heart beating steadily in his chest. Liam and Carla step inside, their faces full of false politeness. They're expecting a quiet dinner, the kind they've always had, the kind where they pretend everything is fine. But tonight, the narrator is the one holding the cards. He welcomes them in, and as they step into the living room, they have no idea what's about to unfold. Everything is in place. The table is set, the guests are arriving, and the evidence is ready. The narrator has spent weeks preparing for this moment, and now, as he leads everyone to the dining room, he knows one thing for sure. The truth is about to be revealed, and Liam and Carla are about to learn an unforgettable lesson in respect. The narrator smiles to himself, the excitement of the confrontation welling up inside him. He's no longer afraid. Tonight he's taking control. The guests slowly file in, each one greeting the narrator with smiles and casual pleasantries. He nods, welcoming them warmly, though his mind is focused entirely on what comes next. Liam and Carla stand near the door, exchanging looks of confusion as they take in the unfamiliar faces. The atmosphere is thick with tension, but no one knows just how charged the night will become. As the last of the guests settle into their seats, the narrator moves to the head of the table. He places his hands on the back of his chair, gathering his thoughts, the weight of what he's about to do settling on him like a cloak. He can feel the calm determination rising within him, the same calm that he had felt when he first started planning this dinner. He knows what has to be done. The years of silence, the emotional toll of being taken advantage of, have all led to this moment. He's no longer the quiet, accommodating father. Tonight, he takes control. Before the dinner is served, the narrator stands and clears his throat. His voice is calm, but everyone can sense the weight in it as he addresses the room. He thanks everyone for coming and gestures toward Liam and Carla. Then he pauses, looking directly at Liam. "You know, Liam," the narrator says, his voice unwavering, "I've spent a lot of time thinking about everything that's happened, about all the years I've spent doing everything I could for you. But tonight, you need to know the truth." The words hang in the air, and a hush falls over the room. Liam's face flickers with confusion, but he doesn't interrupt. Carla, on the other hand, shifts uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. The narrator turns to Carla, his gaze hardening. "And Carla, I'm sure you've been preparing for tonight, just as I have. But you're not the only one with secrets." A ripple of confusion spreads across the room. Everyone turns to look at Carla, who immediately tries to regain control of the situation, her eyes flashing with irritation. She opens her mouth to speak, but the narrator continues, not giving her the chance. "I've had a little help uncovering your past, Carla. The truth about your previous marriages, how you've used men for their wealth and left them with nothing. 2 men, both over 50, both of whom you convinced to marry you and then destroyed them financially. The pattern is unmistakable." The narrator pauses, watching Carla's face turn from confident to stunned as the truth starts to sink in. "Did you really think Liam wouldn't find out about your little history? Did you really think you could just come into my life, manipulate my son, and take what you wanted?" At this, Liam's eyes widen. His face begins to shift, emotions playing across it. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally, a flicker of something darker. Anger. He glances quickly at Carla, as if searching for an explanation, but she's already on the defensive, her lips pressing into a thin line. "That's not true," Carla snaps, her voice rising. "You don't know anything about me. This is all just a game to you, isn't it? You're trying to ruin everything." The narrator remains calm. He knows what's coming next. Carla tries to regain control, but it's too late. The facts are out in the open now. The truth is exposed, and there's no going back. "Liam," the narrator says, turning back to his son, "I've also uncovered something about your finances. The unauthorized transfers. The money I've been sending you all those years thinking it was going toward your future. Instead, it was going toward your vacation fund. Vacations you didn't even have the decency to pay for yourself. How long did you think you could keep taking from me without me noticing? Liam's face drains of color as the realization hits him. He opens his mouth to speak, but no words come out. His eyes dart around the room, his expression now a mix of confusion, guilt, and mounting panic. The weight of his father's accusations presses on him, and, for the first time, he can't explain his way out of it. He looks to Carla, but she's no longer the confident, manipulative presence she once was. Instead, she's scrambling, trying to piece together a defense that's already falling apart. Dad, I didn't mean... Liam starts, but his voice falters, the words strangling in his throat. The narrator takes a deep breath, steadying himself. You didn't mean to, or you just didn't care? I don't know what's worse, Liam, that you've been so selfish or that you thought I wouldn't find out, but it doesn't matter now, Carla interrupts, her voice rising in desperation. This is ridiculous. You're just an old man who doesn't understand. But before she can finish, the narrator calmly cuts her off. No, Carla, it's you who doesn't understand. You think you can just waltz into my life, manipulate my son, and take everything that belongs to me. Well, it ends here. I've already taken the necessary steps to protect myself. My house? It's not going to you. Liam's student loans? I'm stopping the payments. And as for you two, the narrator looks around the table, making eye contact with everyone. You've been living in a world of lies. It's time for you to face the truth. The room is still now. The weight of the accusations hangs thick in the air. Liam looks like he might be physically crumbling under the pressure. His face is pale, his hands shaking slightly. Carla, ever the manipulator, tries to shift the blame back onto the narrator, but her words lack conviction now. The truth is out, and there's no convincing anyone otherwise. Liam finally speaks, his voice cracking. I didn't know. I didn't know you'd find out about any of this. I didn't know it would get this far. The narrator holds his gaze, the anger now subsiding, replaced with a quiet resolve. Well, you know now. As the confrontation unfolds, Liam begins to unravel emotionally. The son, who had once been so sure of himself, so confident in his ability to manipulate and take advantage of his father, now stands at the precipice of his own downfall. The realization that his actions have led him here, that his own father is no longer the pushover he once was, begins to break him. He falls silent, his shoulders sagging, as the weight of his mistakes crashes down on him. Carla continues to protest, but it's clear that her efforts to manipulate the situation are futile. She looks around the room, searching for someone to take her side, but no one speaks in her defense. The evidence is overwhelming, and her facade of confidence crumbles. The narrator, watching his son's breakdown, feels a strange mix of emotions. There's no satisfaction in seeing Liam suffer, but there's a sense of closure. The years of silence, the years of being a victim, have finally ended, and in their place is the knowledge that he has taken back control. The dinner continues, but the mood is heavy, every bite taken in silence, the tension in the room palpable. For Liam and Carla, it's the beginning of the end. For the narrator, it's the beginning of something new. His life, his choices, his control. The stage is set, and the truth has been revealed. The consequences are just beginning. The room is still, the weight of the confrontation lingering like an oppressive fog. Liam sits at the table, his hands shaking, his face pale and strained. His earlier bravado has evaporated, leaving behind a broken man. The confident, entitled son who once thought he could manipulate his father without consequence is now reduced to someone who can barely meet the narrator's eyes. The guilt, the realization of what he's done is written across his face. His words falter as he tries to grasp at some shred of dignity, some explanation, but it's clear he has no defense left. Carla, ever the manipulator, is still trying to salvage the situation. She's flustered, trying to make excuses to twist the narrative in her favor. But her words are falling flat. The damage has been done. She tries to argue that Liam had no idea about the financial transfers, the manipulation, the lies, but it's too late. The narrator has seen the truth, and Liam knows it. Then, as the tension reaches its peak, Liam suddenly speaks, his voice cracking. Dad, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. His eyes are wide, his voice trembling as he desperately searches for words that can undo the damage. I never thought it would go this far. I was just trying to... He pauses, shaking his head as if the words are hard to find, and then continues, his tone filled with regret. I never thought I'd lose you over all this. For a moment, the narrator doesn't respond. He watches his son crumble before him, the weight of his actions breaking him down. Liam's face twists in anguish, his eyes filling with tears as he struggles to form the apology he knows he should have given years ago. The narrator can see it now. Liam isn't just sorry because he's been caught. He's sorry because the reality of what he's done is finally hitting him. All the manipulation, the selfishness, the taking without giving anything in return, it's catching up with him. "I'm sorry, Dad," Liam continues, his voice small now. "I should have been better. I shouldn't have let Carla convince me to do any of this. Please, I'm asking for your help. I don't know what to do now. I've messed everything up. Please, help me fix it. Help me get out of this mess." The words hang in the air. The narrator feels a rush of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness, but something else too. Something he hasn't felt in a long time. Strength. Liam's apology is heartfelt, but it's too late. The narrator's eyes remain cold, his heart steady as he meets his son's gaze. "Liam," the narrator begins, his voice steady and firm, "you've spent years taking from me, using me, and now you want me to fix your mess? You want me to clean up the wreckage you've caused? You want me to bail you out of the consequences of your own actions? I can't do that anymore." There's a slight tremor in the narrator's voice, but his resolve doesn't waver. "Liam, you've had every opportunity to make things right, but instead you chose to take advantage of me. You chose to lie, to manipulate, to steal from me, and now you expect me to come in and save you. I won't. I can't." The words feel heavy as they leave his lips. For a brief moment, he sees the desperate look in Liam's eyes, and a part of him wants to reach out, to comfort his son, to be the father he's always been. But the pain of betrayal is still raw, still fresh, and the narrator knows that this isn't about being a father anymore. It's about standing up for himself, about drawing a line in the sand that cannot be crossed. "I'm sorry, Liam," the narrator continues, his voice firm, but there's a finality to it now. "But I'm done fixing your problems. You've made your choices. Now, you'll have to live with them." Liam's face crumbles at the words, the tears finally spilling over as he realizes that his father is no longer the man he once thought he could manipulate. He tries again, his voice breaking. "Dad, please. I don't know what to do. I've lost everything. I need your help." But the narrator shakes his head, his expression softening only slightly as he delivers his final response. "You've already lost everything, Liam, and I'm not going to be the one to fix it for you. I've spent my whole life putting you first, but I'm done. Now it's time for me to take care of myself. It's time for me to live my own life." The words are a turning point, not just for Liam, but for the narrator as well. The narrator knows deep down that what he's saying is the right thing to do. He's not heartless. He's not abandoning his son. But he's no longer going to sacrifice his own well-being for someone who has shown him nothing but disregard. The apology, the desperation, it's not enough. It's too. Liam looks broken, his shoulders sagging in defeat, his face flushed with shame. He turns his head toward Carla, but even she can't offer him the support he so desperately wants. She's no longer the strong, confident woman who had promised him the world. She's just as much a part of this mess as he is, and neither of them has anyone left to turn to. The silence between father and son is thick. Liam's eyes are filled with a mixture of anger, regret, and desperation, but the narrator remains resolute. He's finally made the decision he should have made years ago, to stop enabling Liam, to stop pretending that everything will be okay if he just sacrifices a little bit more of himself. No more. Finally, Liam gets up from the table, his eyes red, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know what to say." The narrator simply watches him leave, feeling no relief but a quiet, steady resolve. He's not fixing his son's mess. He's not rescuing him from his consequences. Instead, he's choosing to focus on himself, on the life he has left to live, on the choices he has the power to make. As Liam and Carla leave, the house feels quieter, emptier. But for the first time, the narrator feels like he can finally breathe. He's not weighed down by the burden of being a doormat anymore. He's free to live for himself, and it's a feeling he never thought he'd have again. As the last of the guests leaves, the house falls into a deep silence. The clinking of silverware and the murmurs of awkward conversation have faded into the past. The door closes behind Liam and Carla, their departure marked not by the sense of relief the narrator once might have felt, but by something stronger. Something that feels like finality. The narrator stands in the empty room, looking around at the scattered remnants of dinner, half-empty wine glasses, untouched plates, and the warm, lingering smell of the meal he had prepared with care. He could feel the weight of the evening settling into his bones, the exhaustion from the confrontation, but also the undeniable sense of something else, freedom. He stands still for a moment, allowing the silence to wash over him. He had taken the power back. The years of being a victim, of living in the shadow of Liam's needs and Carla's manipulation had ended tonight. There is no immediate sense of joy, no triumphant smile. It's more like the quiet stillness of a storm that has passed. The emotional noise that had once consumed him is gone, leaving only clarity in its wake. As he moves through the house collecting the dishes and cleaning up, he realizes something profound. He's no longer the man who cowered in the background, afraid to speak up, afraid to take action. He's no longer the pushover who lived in fear of confrontation. He's a man who has rediscovered his strength, who has taken the hard, painful steps to finally stand up for himself. The idea that he had once been invisible, that he had been a victim of his own kindness and generosity, now feels like a distant memory. For the first time in years, he feels like he's in control of his life. Liam and Carla may have walked out, but the narrator knows something they don't. They've lost. They've lost because they underestimated him. Because they believed he would always be the man they could manipulate, the man who would always clean up their messes. But that man is gone. The narrator has shed that skin. And what's left is a man who understands the value of boundaries, the importance of self-respect. As the last plate is put away, he stops and takes a long look at himself in the kitchen mirror. His reflection stares back at him, the same gray hair, the same wrinkles, the same face that had once been consumed by guilt and self-doubt. But now, when he looks at himself, there's something different. There's a quiet strength in his eyes, a steadiness in his posture that wasn't there before. The vulnerability that had defined him for so long has been replaced by a newfound clarity, a sense of empowerment that is almost foreign to him, but welcome nonetheless. He breathes deeply, feeling the weight of the years lift from his shoulders. The house, once a symbol of all his sacrifices and disappointments, now feels like his own again. It's not just a building, it's his sanctuary. He's not going to let anyone take that from him. Not Liam, not Carla, no one. He's not the weak, needy father anymore. He's someone who has the power to choose his path, someone who no longer needs to bend to the will of others. The next morning, as he enjoys his first quiet cup of coffee in weeks, the narrator smiles to himself. It's a small, quiet smile, but it's full of meaning. He's been given a second chance, not just at his life, but at his own sense of dignity. He's finally learned to put himself first, and in that moment, he knows he will never again be the victim of someone else's manipulation. The chapter with Liam and Carla is closed. The house is his, the power is his, and for the first time in years, he feels like he's not just surviving, but living. The fear is gone, the uncertainty is gone. What's left is a man who knows his worth and is no longer afraid to defend it. The future is his to shape, and he's ready to embrace it fully. No more apologies, no more regrets, just the quiet certainty that he has reclaimed his life. The narrator walks out into the garden, the morning sun casting a warm glow over the familiar landscape. He feels a sense of peace that's been missing for a long time, a peace born not from the absence of conflict, but from the knowledge that he has faced it and emerged stronger. There's no need for revenge anymore. The real victory was in taking control of his own life, and as he stands there, breathing in the fresh air, he feels the weight of his old life, his old fears, disappear like dust on the wind. This is his moment, this is his time, and for the first time in years, he's not looking back.